It is said that a good reader makes a good leader. But in the case of Nigeria, I wouldn't tell. Hello, viewer. It is still your Youth Arena program here on Advent Cable Network Nigeria, ACNNTV. I am Juliet Omere. How many books have you read? Yes, I'm asking. Is it true that if you want to hide something from a Nigerian, hide it inside a book? Well, from records fast have it that the reading culture in Nigeria is declining at a very fast rate. And this is not just peculiar to students, but the youth population in general. For instance, the rate of failure in the West African Examination Council in the last 2 decades, except for the year 2021. So this brings us to the topic, improving reading culture among the youth. With me in the studio are people who have developed practical ideas through reading. They are Damilola Ilupeju, an historian, and Akachukwu Okafor, an energy and climate change specialist. You're welcome to the studio.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you.
All right, to you, Mr. Akachukwu, going by your in-school and after-school, what would you say is reading culture? That when you are to mentor someone and how to develop a reading culture, what would you describe as a reading culture?
Reading culture is having an interest
Okay.
in studying, in being curious, in understanding one's environment, because curiosity would help you want to read books.
Okay.
And I wouldn't want to limit it to just reading books, because the world is changing or has changed from what we know it before. Now you can listen to podcasts,
Okay.
you can watch videos that are edited or produced to transfer knowledge, because the central idea of reading is to acquire knowledge. So reading culture essentially is studying to understand a topic much better, or a perspective better than one previously knew about it.
Okay. So that's what you would describe as a reading. What if someone, you're a student, you're mentoring, and you would want that person to build a particular kind of reading culture? Like now, for instance, there are people who cannot read in a noisy environment.
Yes.
There are people who can read when there is noise and they will assimilate. So
Certainly.
what would you advise that person to do in order to discover which time is good for him or her to read, understand, and assimilate?
Well, it's a personal thing to
Okay.
everyone. Everyone has his or her level of attention span when it comes to reading, when it comes to listening to people. So you have to know what your attention span is and what you are distracted by. If you are distracted by people making a noise,
Okay.
you know that you should avoid environments where people will make a noise. But there are people that are attuned or that are inspired to read when there is music, which is which you wouldn't necessarily call a noise, but an organized form of sounds.
Okay.
So it's left for one to. Some prefer reading when they are immersed in nature, maybe outdoor, find a space where there is no music at all, where it's just nature, birds, and things like that.
Okay.
Some prefer reading at night, some prefer at their own solitude
Okay.
to read. So it depends on what each individual, what works for each individual. So when I talk to people, when I work with youths that are interested in reading, it's important to know what works for them
Okay.
before. But many times it doesn't really work out that way, because For instance, some people prefer reading at night, but then you have problems or challenges that would make it difficult for such a person to read at night. For instance, lack of electricity, or maybe if someone is living in an area where there are no libraries and where there is no noise to read, so those could be challenges. So it means one has to adapt his or her own preferences or what works for the person to the reality of his or her environment.
All right, thank you, brother. Miss Dami, as an historian, I know you might have read so many books, documentaries, historical artifacts. Now, what would you describe as reading culture?
Well, reading culture is pretty much like what Akachuku said. Reading culture is a habit of reading, really. It's just how you read and the kind of books you read or the kinds of things you interact with. And reading doesn't necessarily have to do with, just books like you mentioned. It's materials, videos that you can get information from. In history, reading is it's almost very critical because, some people, and we have different ways of reading. We read for different purposes. We read to gather information. We read, if we want to absorb, we read for leisure. If we're reading for leisure, it's kind of different from studying a particular book. So of course, in history, you wouldn't just be reading or reading for leisure. You'd be reading to, gather facts, to analyze historical data and how that can be applied, because usually it's past documents you're looking at or first materials, either from secondary or primary sources. So, well, mostly secondary sources because we're talking about books here.
Yeah.
So, from, documents, gazettes, dictionaries, autobiographies, and the likes.
All right, okay. Now, what is the importance of reading? Because if you have to let someone know how important something is for you, just like you're putting on your jacket, you tell it, why am I supposed to put on this? Because you want to look good and corporate. So, how important is reading?
You introduced the program by saying that reading makes a leader.
Okay.
I want to make a quick reference to the Bible, particularly Daniel.
Okay.
Daniel discovered that the children of Israel had overstayed in Babylon just because he had to read. He was reading and discovered where it was written that they were going to spend a certain number of years, and they have overstayed the number of years that was prophesied that they would be in exile. And he started to pray, he started to intervene. So, and eventually it took, that is known what happened. So what really helps one in the case of Daniel is to know the things that are hidden. Studying opens your mind, or reading. She mentioned people read for pleasure, people read to know historical facts and all of that. So depending on what you're studying for, the benefit would be different. If you're studying to pass an exam, the benefit would be that you are likely to pass your exam. If you are reading for leisure, the benefit at the end of the day would be that you feel relaxed, depending on the material you are reading. If you're feeling maybe anxiety, it will help remove your anxiety. If you are studying just to gain knowledge or understand a subject, you gain mastery of that subject. So it actually depends on the purpose for reading. But generally, reading builds your mind. It's just like exercising. When you are exercising physically, weight lifting, you are building your muscles. But when you are studying, you are building your intellect, you are building your mind, you are expanding your horizon. It makes you become a better person, more aware of your environment, and also understand how other people see things. Because as I'm sitting here on the chair, I can't see my back, right? It will, if Dami is able to write on what is behind me, it's by reading what she had written that I will know what's happening in behind it. So it helps us understand the world from other perspectives, and we become better persons.
Okay, all right. Thank you. And now to you, Miss Dami. If you were given a group of pupils to be under your care, to guide them through. Now, outside them reading to pass their examinations, how will you generally promote reading culture in them, even outside school?
Well, it's very good that you mentioned that, because as the word suggests, culture, reading can be a socialized skill. So sometimes if you grow up in an environment where people read a lot, you're likely to develop the habit as well. So it's important for children to have good role modeling. So if they have models, that they watch on TV, maybe there are children programs or shows that actually encourage that habit, or they find people or their parents themselves encourage the habit. So for example, growing up, my dad used to be someone who read a lot. My mom too, being a teacher, read a lot. Because of course, to teach your pupils, you need to have study notes, you need to study, so that when your pupils have questions, you're not left hanging. You don't have, you're able to answer the questions, because children are very curious by nature.
Yeah.
The reason why a lot of children don't get beyond a certain level is because the curiosity has been dampened by some sort. But reading culture can be encouraged if parents can, role model these habits to their kids. And also, involve them, read alongside. It's very important, especially when it started on time. It started from a very young age.
Okay.
So when you start reading to a child, from when the child is even very little as from the womb even, because there are studies that show that children can actually hear when it's being read to them, even from the womb. So if it's a habit that started then, and even if it's not even started at that time, or it's not started soon enough, it's important that as soon as the realization or the importance of, reading to the child comes up, you should enforce such habits so that it becomes part of the child.
Okay.
So those are things that you could do. You could read to the child, and then nowadays you have technology that you could do audiobooks. Like you said, podcasts. But at that age, you might not be doing podcasts. You could do audiobooks, because they have children versions of audiobooks as well.
Yeah.
And they could listen to the books being read to them, and they could also read. And the thing about reading is, it's a skill. The more you exercise it, the better you become. And there are also exercises that you could make it fun, and you could make it engaging for kids. Because when children feel like it's a task, they might not really keen to it. But when they know it's fun and exciting, and there are rewards attached to reading, then obviously, and of course, parents can collaborate with schools too, because children go to school, and they can collaborate with the schools to introduce some of these things, like reading book reports, some of these things. These are things that also helped me growing up to develop my reading skills. So these are things that could also still be very relevant in our time today. Book reports, children would read some books and talk about what the book is saying, the context, the setting. So these are things that could improve a child's abilities.
Alright, even those days, the church Sunday schools, they read story books and they start narrating a story about David killing Goliath and other things. Okay, now to you, Mr. Kachiku, being, should I say, a specialist in energy and climate change. So how did you develop your reading culture? And now related to how can you generally advise people to develop good reading culture?
Thank you. I'd like to pick up from where Dami to re-emphasize some of the points you made. It's the parents that would actually help a child develop a reading culture. These days, it's difficult to find books in homes. No newspapers in homes. Everything has gone online. But then, physical novels, books haven't all gone online. Growing up, I had books around me. My mom will buy novels during the holidays to say, you must finish this. This is outside the novels that we read as part of the school program. And then I saw my dad reading newspapers. At the age of 10, I was buying newspapers with my own money. I would go out buying newspapers and was reading. And that started, I went to visit one of my uncles who just got wedded. And at night, he and his wife would go out, and they would want me to stay up so that when they come in, I will still be awake to open the door. So they made me to, this should be at the age of 7 or so, they made me to watch the news so that I will be awake. But then they will tell me that when they come back, I will summarize what I learned from the network news. So after the news, that was when I built my interest in public affairs, not reading novels anymore. So after the news, it made me become curious of what I've listened to. And the next day, I will go to look for newspapers to read, to learn more about what has happened. And that's what had sustained me in terms of, because reading, there's something that reading does to you. When you read, you find yourself having interest in so many other things, because when, I don't know, it has a way it happens that somehow you observe that you have satisfied your interest in a certain area, because the knowledge you have gained in that area has accumulated, and you find your interest shifting into a different area totally. That's how you find people having interest, become masters or experts in different fields, because they have been able to transit from one subject area to another. To answer your question specifically, it's just all about curiosity, trying to solve problems. Because if you have a problem, for instance, and you think you're thinking about a solution, the only way you can learn about such a subject is to read more about that thing, to know what other people have, how other people have experienced the problem you are facing. I mean, now I'm talking about climate change, energy, and other things. I've developed interest and expertise, and so it's that way. And reading, it's just something one should enjoy, but you can't enjoy reading if you don't start. I mean, from when the kid is a toddler. I mean, that's when bring books. It can be pictorial books. Start from there. It's not when the person is at age 12 you start talking about reading. It wouldn't make any sense at all.
Good. All right. Thank you, Mr. Akretu, for that. Because I wish that our youth of today would, because sometimes when you turn on the channels, they'll kind of, what this? I want to watch African Magic. I want to watch.
Oh yes, it was inculcated in them by the parents.
I want to watch it. So that's the problem we're afraid. Look at you now. You started watching the channels. Then at the end, they tell you to summarize. That's, you actually assimilated what you watched. So thank you for that. All our viewers will be going on a short break. Just like Mr. Akin said, when you read, you get informed and develop your mindset. Sit back, relax.
On this show, we focus on the journey from girlhood to womanhood and everything in between.
You hear such comments like it's not ladylike because there is a way a lady should behave.
Please don't ask a man out. I beg you. We are so cultured that the day you do.
It is in that place of fellowship that you get to discover all these things.
You discover yourself.
Yes.
Biology-wise, women are able to progress faster into addiction than the men.
Don't crucify the woman for wanting financial security.
Remember, every woman is worthy by design.
Welcome back, viewers. Still with us in the studio is Miss Damilola and Mr. Akachukwu. Before we went on a short break, we tried to explain what reading culture is. And now we continue with the discussion. As we turn to you now, the lady, you look more like a professor. Yeah.
Thank you.
Are there books that are cared for a particular season for someone to read? Because I tell you, once one leaves school, it's as if dragging the person to read is something that is too hard for one to do. Like, let me take myself for instance. If it had been long I read some books, for me to read again, I'll start, if I'm going back on a course, I'll start with motivational books that will build my reading culture again, because I want to go into something that I had to read and assimilate to be able to give out. So now, are there books that are
Specific season?
yes for a season?
Well, for me personally, I see it as it has a personal angle to that. For me, it's not really about, and reading is not something I feel people should impose really, because it has to come personally. I just feel like when you make, it's just like children. When you force them to do something, you find out that you get the opposite of what you're trying to achieve. You're trying to force them to get something done, and they're resisting you, and you get frustrated.
Okay.
So it's always very good to. So reading is also something you can strategically, apply.
Okay.
So I feel there are no specific seasons. I think it's you that determines the season. You might be in a season in your life where this is you might be in the process of a career change, and maybe you're moving from a scientific field to a non-scientific field, and you don't know anything about the field. You might need to, engage in some material, some articles. You need to read some things, read some books to expand your mind, just to give you a feel of what it is you're doing. And you might be doing a course, and usually when you're doing a course, there'll be supplementary readings, or books that you have to gloss over. So those are things that could affect. So what is going on in your life at that time could be what determines
What you read.
So it could be that you're in a season of marriage, or a season that you want to get married. You find yourself reading a lot more, premarital books. You find yourself reading a lot of, if you're a Christian, of course, this is a Christian program, so you find yourself reading a lot of Christian books written by, seasoned counselors, Christian counselors. You find yourself reading books, talk about the psychology or biology of women and men, how they think differently, how that affects the relationships between them, because you want to prepare yourself for that stage.
Okay.
Also, you can also be in a situation where you've not entered school yet, and you might be needing some encouragement. You read books that that speak to that, success in your career. How do you make it once? How do you prevent yourself from idling in the marketplace? You don't want a situation where, there's also, of course, subject-specific books like I mentioned. If it's, communication you want to do better at. There's some personal skills you want to develop. As human beings, we're growing, we're developing, and we're not perfect.
Of course.
So there's always something we should improve on or we can improve on.
Mm.
So those are things that would point you to the areas, it might be psychology you're interested in, Some of the things you even read in certain seasons might just be, based on, what is lacking or what is needed at the time.
All right. I know Mr. Akachukwu is itching to add up something as a professor here.
I want to disagree a little bit with what she said about not imposing reading.
Okay.
If you don't impose it on a child at a very young age, it becomes a problem. Okay. Maybe not imposing, but you have to make the child read. I want to give an example with Dr. Ben Carson.
Okay.
When he was little, we are told from his book that the mom had no alternative than to send them to the school, the library close to their home. Unfortunately, these days we don't have any libraries around. They are poorly equipped. I mean, our national library, unfortunately, have been there for how many years? I think that library was commissioned for, it's going to at least 25 years. Okay. But we build other infrastructure, completed them, but our national library is yet to be completed. Let me go back to the story of Ben Carson. Their mom had to force them to go to the library to pick up, to read, and it was difficult for them. They didn't like it initially, but somehow he developed interest in reading about science and all of that. So where it would be a problem of imposition, or when it will look like an imposition, is for children that have outgrown a certain age, and you then try to force them to do it. That is when it will be a problem. But for kids, there are different ways that you can introduce them to reading that won't be seen as an imposition. It will be fun for them. And just to add a little to what she said about when one, at what does one read at a certain age and all of that. There was a time I would carry extra money in my wallet for 10, 15 years ago, if not 20, in my wallet to buy books. When I travel, what excites me is about the things I will see and the books I'm likely to buy. I bought books a lot, and in a month I will do 2 books or 3. But when I graduated, or even close to graduation, I found myself not reading books in terms of novels and autobiographies and all of that, motivational books, personal development books. I found myself reading more of subject-specific books. Now, it's been a long time I picked up books to read, because I no longer have time to exhaust reports in my field, new research information, articles. So depending on the age, you find yourself reading things that has to do with your career, discipline, to improve yourself. But if cumulatively, I'm reading much more than I used to, but it's no longer novels and books. I remember Justice Muhammad Uwais, when he was retiring, and he was asked, "Sir, what will you be doing in your retirement?" And he laughed and said, throughout the time he was at the Supreme Court, he had no time to read. Of course, at that level, he was attending lots of events, books, people, launch of books. He said all those books he had acquired all these years, this is the time to now read them, because he was busy reading law reports and cases on his table. So I think that is how it is, basically.
Okay, you know those days when you ask a child, they say, "I want to be like Chikobi," "I want to be like Chinua Achebe."
Yes.
And currently we have Chimamanda Adichie.
Yeah.
Now, what is happening? The youth are no longer aspiring to be successful. Just you made mention you no longer have time to read. Not that you don't read, but because you focus on a particular field.
But I still buy
Or you
books.
still buy books.
I still buy books
Maybe
and
for your
keep that.
retirement. Now, what am I saying is how can we encourage our youth to read? Yeah.
Okay. Like our brother had mentioned earlier, he talked about how reading is not imposed, or should I say disagreeing with my view. I was talking about that based on, my perspective as a youth. Because as a youth, I don't feel like reading is something that someone can impose on you. It's something that at that stage, you're responsible for your life, you're an adult, and you should be able to make some decisions without anyone imposing on you.
Okay.
It's not like someone cannot encourage you, of course.
Yeah.
And like you said, these are things that are incremental. It's like reading speed as well. There are some books that you would maybe when you were younger, it'd take you 5 days.
Okay.
And now, because of your level of reading or your reading speed, it might take you a few hours.
Okay.
You might just go through it and skim and scan, and you already have an idea of what the entire book is. There are also strategies, of course, in reading.
Now, would want to know those strategies. That is to encourage it now. We'll be bringing together both the government, homes, churches, because I know that we have lots of spiritual books that churches publish for our own knowledge and our spiritual growth.
Well, there are a few vehicles in place to actually encourage youth, and some of them we have book clubs. They are not very book clubs. So
Do we
literally,
still have them now?
we still do. There are digital book clubs. There are also they send you emails of books they're reading this month or they're reading this week. These are things that you could subscribe to. And there are also many platforms now where
Sorry, I just said book clubs have become elitist.
Okay.
Kind of,
yeah. They are now very exclusive things that people do. But in many other countries too, they have, so many other countries. Online, we have different kinds of these things, different forms. And now books are also available digitally. So you can also, engage. If, for example, now, I'm someone who likes to listen to audiobooks sometimes. And what I do sometimes is I find a book that's very interesting. I suggest it to a friend. They might not necessarily read that book, but just looking through the app, they might find something that catches their interest. Okay. So for me personally, I say that one way we can encourage youth is sometimes even in conversation, chip in, make some quotes, and they're like, where did you get that from? And you tell them it's from this book, and they're like, you should read it sometime. It's like chipping in conversations, Sometimes the level of conversations you have with people would kind of make them curious as to where you get information from. That kind of encourages them to want to read certain things. So, book clubs are one. There are also audiobooks or digital books. There are also podcasts where they can suggest this kind of books. And then there are also newsletters that you can, because sometimes it's not necessary to actually read a full cover book or an ebook. Sometimes you might need to read some newsletters or follow a particular publication in your particular industry. So you're now in the field of IT. You can just follow up, with trends and everything that's going on in IT by just subscribing to certain organizations. For example, Forbes. Forbes. They print out daily publications in different subjects. These are things you could, and they also recommend books. Or articles that people have written that can, expand your knowledge on that particular subject.
All right.
So, yeah.
Thank you. And now, from beginning,
I like
you
to
want
add
to say something?
to what she said.
Yeah.
More practical ways to help young people develop the habit of reading or introduce them to reading is organizing competitions, essay competitions.
Yeah.
I remember when I was doing my undergraduate, I would go to a very funny story. I'll go to I arrive school almost 2 weeks before resumption. And what am I doing in those 2 weeks? I go around the school to read notice boards, to know what is going to happen, what the school has set out for students. And I remember in one of those tours of the different faculties, I came across the Nigerian Stock Exchange essay competition. I don't know if they still do it, but this was in 2004, 2005, thereabout. I found myself in the library reading about the topic they wanted students in the universities to write on. And gradually, I realized that my interest, I was studying computer science at the time, my interest shifted to social sciences.
Wow.
And of course, I had written many of their essays over the years and other internationally competitive essays, and I have won awards doing that. So one way is to organize essays for young people to write. The church can do it, government can do it as well. Even in neighborhoods, these things can be organized and put in very attractive prizes to them that would draw young people, their attention, and not things like, pardon me, we know the big program that we have on TV nationally that draw the attention of young people. Very unproductive exercise. So I do believe, and I've tried to advise government, because one of the times my team and I won an international competition in South Korea. We represented Africa in the competition. And when I came back, I met with that was in 2013. I met with the then Minister of Communications Technology, Dr. Omobolaji Johnson, and I said to her, I sincerely think that companies that your ministry supervise, NCC supervise, of course, she was supervising Science and Technology Ministry then. Big companies like MTN, Glo, and all sorts there should be a policy that will ensure that these companies spend a certain percentage of maybe their profit or their CSR work in promoting science, technology, through reading, through competitions, and not some of the things we find that they sponsor in our society that has nothing with advancing reading and knowledge. But many times, not just government, I want to say the church is also distracted with other things. I'm happy that there is a youth conference that the church is organizing, which will take place soon. But an aspect of that conference might be an essay competition that would help on a specific topic that will help youth to read and study. I mean, you never know how that can get young people interested in studying.
All right. Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much. So before we go to our quiz, so start scrapping your brains. Start warming up for it. So I want Miss Dami to generally tell the viewers the benefits of reading. Although we mentioned some of them before now, but we'll just try to pinpoint them out.
Okay. Reading is a very good skill. It helps to expand your mind. It takes you to places that you could probably never have visited if you didn't. So, for example, I can know about what's happening in the US and never have been to the US, just because someone had, collated the experiences of the US, touring the entire 50 states in the US. Reading is something that takes you. It improves your imagination. It's something that's when you involve yourself in reading, it can be enjoyable, of course, because I don't feel like reading would have the acclaim it does if it wasn't enjoyable at all to an extent. So depending on the quality of books you read, because books are not created equally. So it's always very good to invest in good books. And when I say good books, I mean edifying books, books that expand your mind, books that that make you better as a person, that want to develop the areas in your life that, you know, that you need to grow as a person. Okay. Your relationships with people, your relationship with yourself, your mindsets, the kind of thoughts that you think. Because, you know, in general, books are like an outside, you know, influence of, they are an outside thoughts. They're people's thoughts put on paper. So they actually kind of determine the kind of things you do. So I'm going to give you an example. So I was watching a documentary, and the documentary was about a serial killer and how he got there. You know, people don't just get to where they are. You know, it's daily processes or daily actions that lead to, you know, that kind of sums up the totality of a person. So he had been reading some kind of demonic books. Okay. He had been reading books about, you know, violence, some spiritual stuff, occult, and all these things, you know, how to use some certain knives. I didn't even know that such books exist, but, you know, they do exist. Oh, yeah. So those are kind of books, you know, he was reading. And over time, you know, the need, the curiosity, you know, books actually make you curious about the world because it takes you from point A to point B. It's like you've left the position of being a novice about something to becoming better informed about something. And what books should do is, they shouldn't just be something you just, you know, read and digest. It's also something that you read, digest, and apply. Okay. And I'm going to give you a very practical example because we're youths and we're Christians. Okay. When you read the Bible, you know, the Bible also says we should study to show ourselves approved, workmen that need not to be ashamed, that rightly handle the word of truth. And they said a man who hears the word of God, studies it, but does not put it into practice. Okay. It's like someone that just looks at himself in the mirror and does not know forgets what he looks like. Okay. So reading should always, you know, it should always transcend the activity. So it should broaden your mind, broaden your perspective, you know, kind of guide your life.
All right. Exactly. Because of time, everybody get ready for the quiz and examination. We know students they don't like examination time. It always comes with tension.
Yeah.
All right. The ladies first, right?
Okay.
Okay. The first question here is: if a good reader is a good leader, sing the national anthem.
The national anthem.
Yeah, Nigerian national anthem.
Okay. The first or second, both stanzas of the first one. You said I should sing it.
Okay, so say recite it. Let's
arise, O compatriots, Nigeria's call of day. I have to sing it.
You're fair.
No, but
it has been singing, so now sometimes when we sing, when we sing, we don't get the exact words. We don't get the message.
Not necessarily.
But I want you to recite it.
No, not necessarily, because for me personally, you know, it's just like in school.
It's a quiz, so you have 1 minute.
I get it. Just a minute. I need to say this first. Well, when you're studying, you know, there are several mnemonics you use. Sometimes you turn like Boy's Law, you know, you sing it, you recite it. There's certain things that we remember. Even the 66 books of the Bible,
time is going.
There was a song, you know, so I have to sing it. Arise, O compatriots, Nigeria's call of day, to serve. Arise, O compatriots, Nigeria's call of day, to
failed. It's okay.
Yeah, right now I feel like I'm on the spot. That's why it's a bit, Okay, no, but obviously I know the national anthem. Why would I'm a Nigerian. I'm just on the spot right now. Okay. And because you kind of caught me off guard when you said I should sing and then recite. So I have to like.
All right, no problem. I know.
But of course I do know the national anthem. Why would I know the national anthem?
Are you not a Nigerian?
I'm a Nigerian, full-fledged.
Okay, Mr. Akachuku. Recite.
Just let me set the rules.
Okay.
For your quiz.
Okay.
Let's go on.
So, if you ask a question I'm not able to attempt, I'll tell you to go to the next one. Yeah.
Okay, you don't want to set the rules.
Well, you didn't set the rules. I'm setting the rules.
I said you have 1 minute. 1 minute to.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, a minute after you have.
Your time is going.
No. My time hasn't started. You haven't asked the question. So my time starts
When you ask the
when you
start
ask
with
the
the
question.
Okay.
And if I should say next, you take the next one. You fail to set the rules. This is how the society works. You don't set the rules, I set the rules.
Or when you change the rules in the process of
because you are a change specialist, climate change specialist. So you want to change the rules now. But at this one, I'm the specialist.
Okay.
Reside in 36 states and carpenter.
Do we have?
Yeah, we have 36 plus FCT. So we have 37 states.
When I was in school,
yeah,
which one? How many states did we have when I was in school?
Tell us, because I don't know when you were in school.
Unfortunately, I can't recite it in a minute.
Okay.
You know. Do you know?
Let's see how far you can go. Let's see how far you can go.
Okay, Abia, Umahia, Adamawa, Yola, Akwa Ibom, Uyo, Anambra, Awka, Bauchi, Benue, Makurdi, Borno, Maiduguri, Cross River, Calabar, Delta, Asaba, Edo. That's where I can start.
Yeah, Bauchi.
I know you know, but if you go for you fumble.
I'm even amazed that I went this far.
Wow.
But I tell you what, when you get a kid in primary school, this is their top.
Exactly. This is their arena.
And they will do it. And I bet you they can't do more than me in what I'm currently doing.
That's why they say, if you think you know this one, do you know that one?
Yeah.
Okay, the next question said, what is the motto in the Nigerian coat of arms?
The motto?
Yeah.
Unity, faith, peace, and progress. It's quite simple. Yeah.
You will not tell me. It seems I like giving you the tough questions.
Oh, so this was easy. I didn't know.
Recite again.
7 times. That's multiplication table now.
Okay, that's
7 times. Recite it.
You have to give me.
Give you words.
Malpractice? They have to shoot the teleprompter and
so that you recite. Yes. It's no longer exam. Your time is counting.
Okay, do we have to answer this question? It just seems like a primary school question.
Yeah, because when you think you know it all, you understand? We should know this.
But I didn't say I know it all when I.
Okay,
I don't
because
think you said so.
it's a primary school, so you need to know.
No, I said it's a primary school question. That's what I said. That's your turf.
7 times 1, 7.
Okay.
7 times 2, 14. 7 times 3, 21. 7 times 4, 28. 7 times 5, 35. 7 times 7, 49. I'm right?
Yeah.
It's
7
times 7. I've made it a key.
9, 63. 10, 70, 11, 77, 12.
At least your school fees in primary school
is not wasted. I mean, obviously, we've kind of burned the school fees at this point.
So. Thank you so much for honoring our invitation. Thank you, Ms. Dami. Thank you.
It's fun doing this.
All right, viewers. This is where we call it a day onto this program. Read to be informed in order not to be deformed. And you have to develop if you want to be a leader. Just like the 2023 election is coming, you have to be informed. Read about leadership. So read to develop your initiative and your mindset. Till we come your way same time, same session next week. Bye for now.